Morning, all you, said the armadillo as he walked into the kitchen and began to prepare a long ago empty pot of coffee for himself, stopped himself, and walked back out into the living room. Sorry about that. Habit of mine to make coffee when I wake up. Can't drink it, of course. Doesn't stop me from trying to make it, though. Haven't had running water for years, but I still go through the motions. The armadillo rubbed his eyes. Sorry, where are my manners? He bowed before the group and straightened himself. I'm Michael. This is my house, and I'm Elsie's father. It's a pleasure to meet all of you, said Michael, smiling congenially to the group. They introduced themselves and sat back down in the dusty cushions and chairs and couches, grinding unappreciatively at the movement once again. So you spent the afternoon with my young Elsie, have you? Asked Michael, standing in the doorway of the living room. Yes, we played hide and seek, and then I showed them where the palace was, said Elsie, smiling at Rose. You did you? Asked Michael, raising one blue eyebrow questioningly towards his daughter. He turned towards the travelers. What exactly are you doing here? Asked Michael. Rowan held out his paws. We're not looters, if that's what you're worried about. We were sent here by a family to look for their missing parents. We got information that they might have been sent here, and we think that they may be in the palace if they're anywhere around here at all. We're hoping to look for them tomorrow if we can. We think some dark magic pulled them to the palace, and we've been paid to check it out to see if they're being held there, said Rowan. Michael relaxed visibly. Well, that's fine then, isn't it? We've got nothing against a search party coming here, but if you were looters, we would have to run you out of town. We may have lost our lives by the paw of our mad king, but we're all so quite attached to our homes. It's hard enough to watch them go to ruin and not be able to do much to fix them ourselves, said Michael. You're not able to do much, are you? Said Samuel. No, we're stuck like this, waking each night, pretending to live as we were, living the same night over and over again as though it's some sort of life, and it's all the king's fault. Him and that blasted dark magic he was practicing did that to us. We've been like this for over a century, waking each night and spending the night unable to hold each other, waiting for the day to just take us back to sleep, and it's just hard to live like this. When we get bored, we spend the night walking around the town chatting with everyone else. Occasionally we'll get visitors, and it's mostly animals that don't know better than to visit our town, and we have to scare them off because if they knew what was going on with us and the other animals in the palace, then it wouldn't be any good for anyone. It's not like we can build trade routes with anyone. No one would want to come trade with a town of ghosts that can't build anything. They would just come and treat us as a group of freaks for their entertainment. I mean, sometimes I get so angry that I try to clean the house. That's about it. But it just gets dusty again. I can't fix the door, the wood's just too old to fix, and there's no source of new wood to work with to fix it with, so the dust just keeps coming. What I wouldn't do to be able to taste a fresh pot of coffee or some of Alice's cooking again, said Michael, visibly frustrated. That's Mother, said Elsie. Why don't you go and see if she and Reuben are up yet, Elsie, said Michael lovingly. Sure thing, Daddy, said Elsie as she skipped out of the room and up the stairs to check on the rest of her family. Michael moved in closer to the group, bending so as not to be overheard by Elsie. If you could find a way to end the king, I would be eternally grateful. This is no way to live, said Michael. Rowan sat back solemnly. Our goal is to find the Amberstones, but we'll see if we're able to help you out, said Rowan gravely. Michael looked at him and smiled. You have no idea how many hundreds of animals you would be saving from an eternal nightmare, said Michael tiredly. You've been awake a very long time, haven't you? Asked Averly. Michael sighed. You start to lose track of the time. It just sort of blends together, somehow getting shorter the longer you've lived. I think it has to do with how long you've been alive, or in our case existed. We can't even leave the town. The farthest we can go is up the dunes away, and then it just pulls us back towards the town, towards the epicenter, the palace, where he did whatever it was that brought us into this perpetual wake. If it weren't for all those mindless guards, we would have dealt with him ourselves ages ago, but he's performed some magic on them, and they circle the palace night after night, making it impossible to get in there without having to deal with them in some way, which we're unfortunately unequipped to do so. Not to mention that whenever we tried to get close to the building itself, we've been repelled by some force. We've been stuck this way for far too long, said Michael. Thanks for letting us know about his troops. We thought about getting in there was going to be a cakewalk, said Samuel. If you went during the day, it would be easier. I would suggest doing it then, as the guards only appear inside the palace at that point. But if you wait until the night, then it's completely full of them, said Michael. Do we have to worry about them coming out here and seeing our camp? Asked Rowan. Michael shook his head. No, they stay near the king, guarding him night and day. It may have something to do with the blasted barrier keeping them alive. I'm not sure. They're pretty mindless as it is, said Michael. Elsie, Alice, and Reuben walked down the stairs and into the living room. See, I told you both we had visitors, said Elsie. Alice curtsied at them. She wore a light green dress similar in design to Elsie, and Reuben wore blue and white pajamas and was yawning, and waved at them as he entered the room. Rose waved back at them. Morning all, said Reuben. Morning to you, said Barklin. Reuben and Elsie sat down on the ground next to where Michael was standing and got comfortable. We were just talking about the king, dear, said Michael. Oh, that evil little fox, said Alice, scowling at the thought of him. Alice slumped down, sitting next to her children. He meddled with dark magic, and we've been stuck like this ever since, said Alice angrily. So we've heard, said Ron. They're here to find their friends. They think the king's gone and taken them, said Michael. They were highly regarded studiers of the ancient magic arts, said Rowan. Well, if they knew anything about life-giving arts or the dark magics, then he probably snagged them to pump whatever information he could out of them to change their circumstances. He probably is sick of being stuck in that palace, said Alice as she hugged Reuben close to her chest. You think he would hurt them? Asked Samuel, concerned. He wasn't known as the Mad Fox King for nothing, said Alice, squeezing Reuben. Let me go, Mum. You're squeezing too tight, said Reuben. Oh, sorry, hon, said Alice, letting Reuben go. Reuben scooted away from his mother and sat on the other side of Elsie. What would he do? Asked Ron. Well, he was known to have torture chambers and prison cells below the palace for dissidents and those animals he felt weren't living up to what they promised him. Or if he was having an off day, he would throw any old animal in a cell if it suited him. We lost some good friends that way. He would pick them off the street and do horrible things to them. Some of them would escape or be released back into the street, raving at what had happened, and some never made it back out from the prison beneath the palace. It really is an evil place, said Alice, folding her arms in her lap. Oh, that's horrible, said Averly. It really is, said Michael. That's why Mom and Daddy don't want me going there during the day, right? Said Elsie. That's right, hon. There are dangerous animals there that could hurt you, and we may never see you again. You promised us you would never go there while we were asleep, didn't you? Asked Alice. Right, Mom, I promise, said Elsie, nodding her head empathetically. Do you folks want to watch the town wake up? It's a pretty magical sight when it gets going, said Michael. That would be very neat to see, said Rose. The group filed out of the room, Elsie and Reuben bringing up the rear, laughing happily and racing around the group as they spread out into the street. They walked by the fence they had pulled down recently. What happened to my fence? Asked Michael, perplexed. Oh, that. Sorry, we pulled some of it down to use it for our fire, said Ron. You what? Said Michael, aghast. Sorry, we had no idea anyone was still living here. We just thought it was some old wood sitting by the side of the road. If we had known about it, we would have asked. You could have been sure of that, said Rowan, waving his arms apologetically out in front of him. Michael sighed. I built that fence over a century ago with my own arms, said Michael. I helped, said Reuben. Yes, you did, said Michael, placing one palm on Reuben's shoulder. Sorry about that, Michael. We had no idea, said Samuel. No. It's all right. The town's in ruins. I just forgot that we're long gone is all, said Michael, looking longingly at the fence he had once built a century ago. They walked up the hill and past the camp where the group had set up their tents and up to the edge of the cliff where they could see most of the city spread out before them. It had started to light up with ethereal blue lights. Towards the center of the town, farther from view, stood the foreboding towers of the palace. Blue flames stood out from the towers' peaks and on the walls. Houses surrounding the palace and throughout the city had started to light up with the same shades of blue light throughout. Our citizens are waking and starting their days, said Michael. Soon the entire cityscape was awash with the same lights, and small blue figures could be seen walking to and from each of the buildings, passing between them, going about their business. Do they do this every night? Asked Samuel, sitting with his legs swinging over the edge of the cliff, watching the city come to life. Oh, yes. Every night we wake up and go about our lives. It's much like being alive. You go to shows, you pretend to go to the store, and there are even schools for the children to go to, said Ellis, holding one arm around Michael. We outgrew them long ago, though. There aren't enough books in the library once you get past the first few decades, said Reuben. That must have been difficult, said Barklin. Oh, no. School's not that much fun, is it? Said Reuben. I always liked it, said Elsie. They sat and watched the city wake up fully until it was bustling and glowing from one end to the other. It's very pretty, isn't it? Said Rose, sitting next to Samuel. She squeezed his paw with her own discreetly. He returned the feeling with his own. Do you want to come down into the town and meet some of our friends tonight? I'm sure it would cheer some of them up to meet some new faces, said Michael. That'd be very interesting, said Rowan. Do we have to worry about spies for the king? Michael shook his head. No, I doubt it. It's pretty much unanimous that he's despised by everyone around here. Come on, we'll take you down to meet our friends, and we'll introduce you to what Azerland used to be like before it disappeared, said Michael. They got up from the side of the cliff and walked down by the house and continued on down the street until they had walked for a distance and turned right and continued for a while until they came up on a row of what could have only been a set of shops in the old city, and an old tavern at the corner of the street. The building was painted in a faded red that had chipped in the sun, turned into a set of pale oranges where the sun had beat down on it mercilessly over the years. Once where there had been two swinging doors, there only stood one, and the other had fallen off its hinge and lay on the ground. As the group walked in and around the slated swinging door, Buckland picked up the door and rested it against the wall on the inside of the tavern. Thanks for doing that. Been meaning to move that for years, said a cheerful coyote behind the bar at the end of the room. He was wiping a glass with a cloth with one ghostly paw. Keith, pleasure to see you, said Michael. Nice to see you too, Michael, said Keith, placing the glass down on the counter. Keith runs the bar here. He's also one of the few of us that can easily pick up items, said Michael. Well, small things like a cloth or a glass. Heavy stuff like that door, haven't quite figured it out yet, said Keith, picking up another glass and wiping it clean. Roy stared up at the glassware behind the counter. It was all spotless. You've been doing this a while, haven't you? Asked Rose, motioning to the glassware. Keith turned and looked at the glasses and nodded. Not much else to do each night, miss, said Keith. Averly looked around the bar. It was as spotless as the rest of the glassware. You've done so well at keeping it clean over the years, said Averly. Keith nodded again. Those of us that can, do that. It keeps you sane, said Keith. Hello, Alice, said Keith, as Reuben and Elsie popped out their heads from behind Alice's dress. Oh, and hello, younglings. The children smiled up at Keith, jumped out from behind Alice, and began running around the bar, playing with each other. I bet this place was wonderful when it was younger, said Samuel, staring around the bar. The town, you mean? Asked Alice. Oh, yes, the town, said Samuel, smiling. Yes, it truly was a wonderful place, other than the king and his thugs, said Alice, who made a sour face at the thought of them. Yes, he really is a horrible thing, said Keith, concurring with Alice's sentiment. Would any of you like some aged cider? I've not had any reason to open it, so it should be quite amazing at this point. It's been sealed for over a century. Rowan's eyes lit up. That would be most agreeable, said Rowan, smiling widely. All right, let's see how well it turned out, said Keith. He moved over to the edge of the bar towards a large barrel with a shiny brass tap on it. He gathered a collection of glass mugs and placed them near the tap, and placing one underneath the tap, opened it. A deep amber liquid poured out of the barrel and filled the mug. He handed it to Rowan, who smelled it tentatively. Well, it doesn't smell like it's gone sour, said Rowan. It's the dry air. Keeps things secured for ages, said Keith. Rowan sipped at the drink. That's absolutely stunning, said Rowan, taking another small sip. That's fantastic. I guarantee you there's nothing like that on the rest of the planet at the moment, said Keith, as he readied another mug and filled it with the same deep brown liquid. He passed one of the mugs to each of them and secured the tap tightly against the barrel, making sure it was closed completely. It dripped twice and stopped. Keith wiped the tap clean and came and sat with the group who had moved to one of the large rectangular tables in the center of the room. They sipped their drink slowly, enjoying the combination of flavors in the cider and took in the ambience of the century-old decor. So what brings you to the great city ruins? Asked Keith. They're here to look for some friends, apparently, said Michael, eyeing the rising mugs with a longing of past memories. He licked his lips. Oh, well, that's fine, isn't it, then? Said Keith, smiling. I think so, said Alice, rubbing Michael's arm with her one stubby paw. The others should be coming in shortly. They'll have woken up not too long ago, I would have thought, said Keith. Hopefully seeing some fresh faces will improve their moods, said Alice. Could hope so, said Michael. So, is this what you do most nights? Asked Sparkling. Come in here and chat, replied Michael. Yes, that's what we do most nights. It's better than sitting around at home sulking. We tell each other stories and try our best to figure out how to keep the city clean and in order where we can. We've been able to keep some of the water running for the last century that way. And Keith here has been able to keep his bar in almost perfect running condition. Keith smiled widely. It's been a point of pride, if I do say so myself, said Keith, leaning back into his chair, phasing through it slightly instead of forcing it to lean back with him. He leaned forward, unsatisfied, and put his elbows on the table instead. Animals of various shapes and sizes started to phase through the walls slowly at first, and continued to come until the bar room was filled to capacity. Keith and the others welcomed them all by name as they entered, and invited them over to meet their guests. Many of the animals were mildly suspicious of the travelers while meeting them, but once Michael explained who it was they were looking for, they opened up and relaxed, and smiles broke over their faces until they were all laughing and chatting as though they had known one another for the longest time. Coyotes, foxes, and armadillos phased through the walls until each seat was taken, but they each made space for each other as they passed by one another in the room, making sure not to touch one another. Brooklyn turned to Alice. Do you feel each other? Can't you just pass through one another? Asked Sparkling, as he watched a young male coyote in a gray vest step out of the way of a female fox vixen in a green dress to allow her to pass. Alice nodded. We could. I mean, ghosts can feel other ghosts for whatever reason. It's not unpleasant, but it's still rude to bungle into somebody else, isn't it? Asked Alice, smiling at him from across the table. Right, said Barkland, smiling back at her. An owl in a great red velvet fez stepped up to the table where they were seated and stood between Michael and Alice. So, these are your new friends, said the owl. Yes, Kurt, these are them, said Michael. Kurt squinted one large blue eye and stared at them for a long moment. It was long enough that Rose started to feel uncomfortable. She sipped at her side nervously, doing her best to keep his staring eye, which she was sure was purely aimed at her and her view. He blinked slowly and smiled. They look trustworthy, said Kurt, and walked off. That was intense, said Rose, and laughed nervously. Don't worry about Kurt. He's just not used to seeing animals that aren't looters, said Alice. Elsie and Reuben ran up with a pair of fox cubs who wore matching outfits. They were clearly twins. Look, Susie and Adam are here. Can we go play tag outside? Asked Elsie. Sure thing, hun, said Alice. Just be careful, all right? We will, said Reuben. The four of them ran excitedly through the room, under the tables, and out through the wall under the window next to the door. The wall glowed a faint blue where they had gone through it before returning to normal. So, do you remember what happened the day everything changed? Asked Samuel. Oh, yes, it's one of the strongest memories I have, said Michael. Alice nodded. It was early evening. We had just finished having dinner, and we were doing the dishes, making sure that everything was clean for the night. Michael was drying them, and I was washing up. The children were upstairs getting ready for bed, and then there was this unearthly blue flash, and I remember dropping the plate and hearing it shatter as it hit the floor, said Alice. Michael held her paw in his own. Alice continued on. So I just signed up for Anchor's funding platform for the podcasters. It seems like a better deal than Patreon at the moment. So I would ask that you click the button that says donate and maybe donate $1 or $5 or $10 a month to us so that we can keep going. And I can produce almost daily or daily podcasts or more in the way that I've been going. And I'll produce book after book after book after book, and then I'll read through them. And I'll keep doing that until I can't see an end to it. It's so much fun. It really is. So please go to anchor.fm/divergentmind and click the donate button, and that'll help me out a whole bunch. Thank you so much, Jay. Please visit anchor.fm/divergentmind to leave a message so that I may get back to you. Thank you. Have a nice day. Hi everybody. So I've made a new store called animalquest.shop, and I made my first shirt, Barkland Reading, at the Amberstones house, and I would ask that you go and buy those there. I'll make a few bucks each time you buy something from there. And I have men, women's, baby clothing, and buttons, as well as other accessories, including dog bandanas, which I think are pretty cool. And I'll be adding more merch every week or two for that store as the stories progress and the sequels are written and read. I'll do the same for Divergent Mind. The link again is animalquest.shop. The link for Divergent Mind will be divergentmind.shop as well. Thank you so much. Jay. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that I have a YouTube channel called Taught Myself, and that I've decided to start selling merch already with a phrase that my brother showed me saying, "My disability is invisible," of which I made a hat for myself. So I decided to make hats, shirts, hoodies for both men and women on Spreadshirt.com. All you have to do is search for "My disability is invisible." It's in green, and that's mine. You'll know it's me because when you click the sale icon, the same little Divergent Mind icon comes up. And I hope you'll support me. I make about $5 per shirt or per sale. Everything else goes to Spreadshirt. But that's okay, because it's still a better deal than a lot of other places. And I really hope you'll support me. Come check me out on the YouTube. Teach me how to do that properly so I can have a community there too. And I await your response. Have a lovely day. Jay.
Hey people, take a listen to the Divergent Mind podcast. You get both insight into living with a serious mental illness and get to listen to a lovely tale about a journey cute little animals need to take. Don't miss out, and remember, divergent minds don't need to think alike.
Please go to ratethispodcast.com/divergentmind and tell me what you think. Thank you very much. Yours truly, Jay.